Hey guys, it's V. Welcome back to the farm. In today's episode, I am going to be revealing some lovely English garden style designs that we have crafted for the front of the farm. You and I are going to be taking a little walk outside to see what's growing in the early spring vegetable garden, and we'll sit down in the tunnel to have a little chat about how to plant for a particularly cold spring. My name is Vanessa, and I'm growing a cut flower farm in Edgewood, Washington, Zone 8B. In 2017, I started growing cut flowers in my grandfather's garden to aid him in a romantic endeavor. And now, with the help of my partner, we're building a business and a community around the local flower movement in our little corner of the Pacific Northwest. Welcome to Pops. We're going to start this week's episode in the farmhouse, and I'm going to reveal to you a design that we have put together for the front of the farm. Now, those of you that know me know that I love a good English garden, particularly of the 17th century or cottage varieties. And I've recently made a new friend who's been sharing all of her English garden books for design inspiration. One of my favorite things about our farm is that when we bought it, it was an absolute blank slate. Now, of course, this can be a double-edged sword in that there's a lot to do. But with a blank slate, it's allowed me to really be creative about all the possibilities for an English-style garden at the front of the farm. And before I reveal my sketches, I just wanted to share that the overall idea is to have a beautiful English-style planting that is lush and full. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera around and show you my very first sketch of what the front of the farm will look like. So here we have it. I am by no means an artist, but hopefully you can tell that we have the house structure here. The front door, for those of you that are not familiar, is over here. We'll be putting in a little garden in the front, removing what grass is there. But what I really want to focus on is the main show, which will be in front of the house. You'll see that we have kept the beds that are already laid out, but we will be removing all the plants and starting fresh. So we'll have one in the upper left, side left, it kind of goes all the way, almost. And then we'll have one up front in the right with a big, beautiful conifer, which is a reference to my mother's home when I was growing up. We will have a show bed in the middle, and this is the one I'm most excited about. We currently have a convenience path right here that goes to this back gate, and that is going to be turned into a proper path. We're going to put an arbor over the gate, possibly plant a laburnum tree or a goldenrod, golden chain tree. Grandma and Grandpa had one at their house, and I think it's a lovely little throwback. And then my good new friend, Kate, has recommended hyacinth bean to go along the fence. And we're definitely going to be doing that as well. But my favorite feature is what's hiding behind that giant evergreen. So I will go ahead and remove the evergreen from our sketch. And hopefully you can tell what that is. It's revealed a windmill. Now, this windmill is actually a creation of my grandfather's, and it's about 5 or 6 feet tall and in need of a coat of paint, but we drug it to the farm from his house, and I can't wait to get it installed. So a fun reveal of a sentimental ornament, and all in all, a really inviting, showy garden that has twists and turns and reveals, and it's just perfectly quaint and romantic. Now that you've seen the idea for the front garden, let's go out and see if I can help you visualize it in the real world. So I'm taking you out the front door at the moment. And this is the view when you get out the front door. Pardon the shadows. We've got overgrown grass, we've got cardboard in preparation for wood chips, and we've got lots of little buckets and planters along the stairs in sort of a European style. So the whole area behind me, the idea is to take out the grass, put in some lovely lower growing things, and use features like the windmill, but other things, not the windmill, that Grandpa made and used to be in his yard. Those will be revealed at a later date, but I think it'll be welcoming. Again, we're going to keep the plantings low as we get towards the house and more wild and bigger as we get further away from the front door. So again, the front door garden will be there. We're going to keep the beds that are established, as you saw in the drawing, but build them up. So the big show will be in the back. We'll remove that giant bamboo, put in some lovely lilacs and things that are going to bring color to the garden all year long. We'll have our large evergreen here. And then, of course, as we walk towards the convenience path around the giant evergreen, it will reveal that lovely, lovely windmill, which will end up about here. To the right of the windmill and across the convenience path, we'll have some hardscaping here. It's going to create a little bit of a barrier between the path and what's to come. And what's to come will be announced in a future video, but it is all about flowers and I'm very, very excited. And then of course we'll have the arbor with the hyacinth bean and some sort of lovely tree. Again, I'm thinking laburnum to set it all off. Coming from the other direction, there will be a path that goes along the front of the house for ourselves and our staff, but the rest will be a lovely meandering little garden. So here the windmill would be to my right, an evergreen would be to my left. We'd have beautiful plantings in this bed here, another gorgeous bed, and we can meander back to the little path and back towards the front door. So I hope that helps you imagine the magical space that the front of the farm is going to be. But in the meantime, you and I are headed to the veg garden. I promised you a quick look at what the vegetable garden has to offer right now. It is early spring. We are in the third week of April. Historically, our last frost would normally be this week, but it's been a particularly cold spring, which is why after this, you and I are headed to the tunnel to talk about what to plant for a cold spring. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and see what there is that's growing, and I will share with you what of these things you can still plant in your own garden right now. The first plant to highlight is this lovely bok choy. Bok choy is a vegetable that prefers cooler weather, so it is nice and happy in the April veg garden. Now, if you have never grown bok choy, it could not be easier. It just likes the cool weather and you can't go wrong. We also have snap peas that are joining the party in the vegetable garden. Snap peas are truly one of my favorite vegetables, and they could not be easier to grow. Again, they love the cool weather, and this is definitely one, like the bok choy, that you could still plant in your vegetable garden right now. Of course, soon they will cover this entire trellis, and what a beautiful sight that will be. Onions are another thing that we have growing in the garden right now. These are onion slips that we bought and planted very recently. They are really just getting going and established. The other vegetable that is traditionally fall planted, actually, that's doing quite well, is garlic. We got our garlic in late this year. We planted in January, but it is still growing wonderful. I'm sure in part because of our cool spring. The last thing that's really excelling in the cool spring, in this vegetable garden at least, is our chives. Now, these are mature chives that we transplanted from grandfather's garden, and they look fabulous. Here they are, nestled under the rosemary tree. I think when the grass is all cut, this will be quite a show, especially as they fill in and just carpet this bed. Speaking of the rosemary tree, this is the first time I've ever seen any hard frost damage on this plant. So to recap, in the veg garden, we have onions and garlic, which it is definitely too late to plant, but we have a lot of other things that it's not too late to plant. And those things would be the bok choy, the kale, the lettuce, and of course the snap peas. We also have the chives, which it is probably too late to plant from seed, but if you pop over to your nursery, I'm sure you can find some there. You might also want to grab some Italian parsley. Parsley is another herb that we use all the time that absolutely loves the cool weather. Now is the time to enjoy it. But now it is time for a tunnel talk. And this week we are going to be discussing how to plant your farm for a particularly cold spring, especially when you didn't know it was going to be a cold spring. In today's tunnel talk, I want to talk to you guys about how to plant for a very cold spring. And I'm going to apologize right now because it is so bright in the tunnel. Next week, I think tunnel talk needs to happen a little earlier in the morning. So let's talk about it. Let's say your last frost is April 20th, like ours is normally. But then all of a sudden April gets here and it's still really cold, and a few weeks go by and your last frost date shows up, but it's still really cold. I mean, less than 10 days ago, we were consistently in the 20s, and that's like unheard of, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So if you find yourself in a similar situation, I recommend that you do what we're gonna do. And it did take me a little while to figure this out. I was really kind of scratching my brain, trying to figure out how we could plan for the best possible outcome, no matter what the weather forecast holds in the next few weeks. What I ultimately decided to do was to hedge my bets. So we are going to plan and take action for every possible scenario, whether it's that we continue to be really, really mild all the way through the 4th of July, which is something that does happen in the Pacific Northwest. It was particularly the norm before I started gardening about 6 years ago. But now, of course, with climate change, we've been having really warm, beautiful springs up until this year. Of course, the other scenario that we're going to go ahead and plan for is that all of a sudden there's a real switch in the weather, and we didn't realize that we've already had our last frost. So we're planning for cold and we're planning for warm. And here's what that looks like on our farm. So I currently have a bunch of summer annuals that are staying warm and cozy in the farmhouse, but I am like a mother trying to get their teenager to move out. I would really like my house back. So I'm going to take those plants and I'm going to plant half of them in the field, which I would normally do if this was a normal spring, because our last frost date has already passed, supposedly. And I'm going to take the rest of them and I'm going to plant them, believe it or not, in the tunnel. Now, most people reserve their high tunnels for really high-end crops. I personally didn't yet have a plan for the next planting of the tunnel. Also, oh my gosh, how much better is that? I can see. Anyways, so we're going to hedge our bets that way with the warm annual stuff, the summer stuff. And of course, those are your cosmos, your zinnias, your sunflowers, your amaranths, things of those nature. Now, when it comes to your cold hardy annuals, they say to start those in the fall, plant them in the fall, overwinter them, and then they just kind of start going. So if you already did that, you're probably good to go. You might have planted a few more this spring, and that way you'll have a little succession of cold hardy annuals. But let's say you didn't start them in the fall, and maybe you killed all of your cold hardy annual seeds that you started in the spring. Just hypothetical, I killed some, not all. I'm not like confessing here. The point is that when you have a really, really cold spring, it extends the amount of time that you can get away with succession planting cold hardy annuals. So even though it is technically past my last frost date, I am still succession sowing cold hardy annuals in the field. I am just direct sowing them. Of course, the ones that I started way earlier in the spring from plugs are already out there, and I'll show those to you in the next farm tour. So if you are having a surprisingly cold spring, I hope that helps give you some ideas of how to deal with it. I would just hedge your bets, plant a little bit of everything, do it out in your field, do it in your tunnel, and that way you're covered no matter what happens. That is actually going to wrap it up for this episode. I'm so glad that you joined me. It's really good to be back. Of course, I'll be talking more about where we were and what we were doing in future episodes. I'm really hoping to get back to creating weekly content. So thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next one. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe.